Handsome Hockey Podcast. 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 Handsome Hockey Podcast.
Handsome Hockey Podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 71, which we are titling Better Late Than Never, because this is our PHF season preview that we didn't get to do last week due to illness. And, you know, the season started without us.
Really, I mean, this is a quality because we didn't do our NHL season preview until that season had already started. So we're just maintaining that status quo for the women.
Before we dive in at all on this PHF preview, we've done this the last couple times we've previewed or, you know, done anything remarkably long form about the PHF. We're not experts on women's hockey.
No, we are appreciators.
Yes, we are watching regularly, but what goes on behind closed doors and in arenas of access for the sport, we are not in those areas, nor do we don't really actually want to be with the NHL either. It's just kind of in your face.
But you should be paying attention to the people that are in those spaces, predominantly those at the Ice Garden. Jake, can you plug some other?
Absolutely. The Ice Garden has so many good writers, but for the PHF, a lot of their big ones are Mike Murphy, Holly Morrison, Dan Rice, and Angelica Rodriguez. Also, if you're not reading Haley Salvian at The Athletic, probably don't like hockey in general. Haley's absolutely brilliant.
What's more hockey than like Haley Salvian making fun of Ian Mendez's puns on The Athletic hockey show? Like it's
nothing at this point, really.
That's generational warfare is what goes on between the two of them. And so it's lovely to listen to. Yeah, also the Victory Press, they're just awesome on all things women's hockey. So we're going to have links to all of these things on our website and social media. And we just want to know that we're listening to women's hockey stuff through their coverage a lot of times and developing our own opinions and watching the games when we can. But these are the prime sources.
Yeah, and if you are, honestly, if you're listening to this and you're a women's hockey fan, you probably already know all of these sources. But if you don't, dive in. We have stumped for The Athletic since I think the beginning of this. It's always worth a subscription fee.
The Athletic.
But Haley Salvian is incredible. Her work there is really phenomenal. But also the Victory Press and the Ice Garden, give them your clicks, click on their ads just to give them some money.
They aren't owned by the New York Times?
Yeah, exactly. Unlike everything else in this world, including my election coverage. With that said, let's dive in on season 8 of the PHF, the second as the PHF, but the first with the almighty dollar amounts increased greatly.
Yeah, I am finally getting used to the name PHF. It does roll off the tongue all right. But yeah, the economic story is really the big one here. They have increased team expenditures and signed a lot of free agents, changed free agency. And so we are kind of seeing a new league forming in a new paradigm being reached in terms of how they're playing.
Absolutely. I think probably the best way to highlight that is to dive into our team previews so you can really see kind of the massive player movement that happened this year. It really kind of lends credence and weight to the fact that we are kind of in a new frontier for women's hockey with the establishments of the higher salary caps and higher contract numbers. And the ability to lure key free agents is something that is something that is now probably going to be a prominent part of the PHF as it moves forward.
So, surprise to nobody, Boston, still good.
Maybe better.
Weirdly, yeah, the rich get richer.
Everywhere but net, yeah, I think they are a better team. Losing Katie Burt, or not so much losing Katie Burt as in choosing to not re-sign them, which I think was more of a financial decision than anything.
Finances came into play a whole lot more this year than they have years past.
Which is, is saying something because there's so much more money to go around. But I think teams were, because of that, there's like this hesitancy to, except for Buffalo's part, to like go out and give that huge contract because you don't know, like, there's no market set, right? Like in the NHL and other sports, you could be like, oh, well, this person is making this much and this player is a comp to that person stats wise. So we can kind of negotiate in that area.
Do we have like a cap friendly for the PHF?
Oh, there is actually a cap friendly for, or something along those lines for women's hockey. It's called Cap Besties. It's the creation of Mike Murphy over at the Ice Garden.
Not to be confused with Cat Besties.
Or is that a real thing?
No, I don't know. It just sounds like it.
I'm
It's
sure it
probably
is.
like some, high grossing like cat Instagram or something.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And it's volume up, and all you hear is like the soft twing of like an acoustic guitar, and that's Ben Shapiro while watching Cat Besties. He's like, oh, they put some water on that cat. It's a wet ass pussy.
Oh, God. I was trying to not sexualize this joke, and well, that failed.
You're saying you're trying to not sexualize a joke while you're like pantomiming heavy breathing into a microphone.
I was trying to do a purr. I was trying to do a cat purring.
Your purse sucks.
Yeah.
Not quite as much as Ben Shapiro. So capbesties.com. If you're into like kind of the financial side of things, if you're a little bit of a nerd like I am, I spend way too much time on Cap Friendly, like every year going, oh, what can the Red Wings do this year? Well, now you can do it with women's hockey and the PHF.
Back to Boston.
Back to Boston.
They're still the best.
Yeah. You talk about like not re-signing people like Katie Burt, Mallory Suliotis. When you go out and you're like, oh, you know what we should do? Let's just sign fucking Allie Thunstrom.
Yeah, right.
Like that Allie Thunstrom.
Allie Thunstrom who caves in teams at both ends of the ice.
Yes, like just way too fast for her own good or the good of anybody else. like she's incredibly good. And her salary has not been disclosed, but I'm going to guess that it's a healthy chunk. Also, reportedly, Callie Flanagan is making the same amount of money as Michaela Grant-Mentis, right around an 80K AAV. So, like, they put money where they thought it needed to go, and they obviously have done smart things because they also brought in Lauren Gable and Elizabeth Jaguar, who have both won the Patty Kazmaier Award for Best Player in Women's College Hockey.
Oh, yeah.
You bring in a ton of scoring, and so it's like, oh, well, we lost Amanda Boulier and Katie Burt and Mallory Suliotis, and you're like, wow, those are all huge losses. Those are all extremely talented players. But
the new talented players. Like, this is like watching a top Power 5 football team reload.
Yeah, like, we haven't even talked about Jillian frickin' Dempsey yet.
Oh, yeah, her.
She's so fucking good. But Christina Patinga, Sammy Davis, Taylor Wenskowski, like, all of these players are absolutely elite, and Boston can roll them out just like on a whim.
Right.
There's no need to shelter an offensive line. There's no need to protect a defensive pairing. You've got Kaylee Fratkin. You've got Callie Flanagan. You're good, right? Like,
and they will miss Amanda Boulier and Mallory Suliotis.
Absolutely.
And her cat, Gordy.
Yeah.
But, there are other defensemen that will make an impact this year. Sorry. There are other defense people that will make it. Sorry.
Defenders.
Yeah, defenders. There are other defenders that will make an impact this year, and other great hockey cats to come.
Yeah. Boston is, I would say, loaded for bear, but they're Lions. So they're so fucking good. Boston is number 1 or number 2. We'll say 1A or 1B to the Whale, who we'll get to here in a little bit. But they're unreal. They're stacked. They're going to score a ton of goals. And because we're doing this late and we have one weekend of games in the books already, they beat the crap out of the Whale on Saturday. Like,
we've got some pudding for proof already. Proof is in the pudding.
It wasn't good. And so like, I think I still have a feeling that the best team in the league is the Whale. But
that's not just wishful thinking.
We'll get to their roster. It's fucking insane.
Right. But roster isn't everything. Boston does it year after year after year with just the culture and the presence. So
yeah, and they also didn't give up a goal all weekend. So like they'll be fine. Yeah, they're gonna be real good.
Good at hockey.
Yeah, it turns out that adding Corinne Schroeder to your team is a good move.
Generally, when teams don't score goals against you, you win.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. We're going from Mike Ditka to John Madden.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, Boston will be really good. Buffalo probably not so much. I think Buffalo is gonna suffer from the same crisis that they did last year, which is that like they were a very young team, they had a ton of new faces, and they weren't very good going forward. They kind of addressed that by bringing in Michaela Grant-Mentis. Like, Michaela Grant-Mentis is obviously fucking awesome.
Right. If you want to be a good team, well, probably get maybe the best player in your league.
They also brought in Emma Newtonen, who has been a fixture on the Finnish world team or Finnish national team for a long time. So they got better, but they also got worse. Like, They lost a good chunk of their defensive core, and they also decided to not sign Carly Jackson, which
head scratcher.
Yeah, especially like you consider that how much Carly Jackson meant to that team, and just how bludgeoned she became as the season went on. Like, she's facing 40, 50 shots every night.
Right.
And, this is a team that...
You think maybe she wanted to move on?
It's possible, but it felt like it was not an amicable split.
Right, like, I'm tired of facing 40, 50 shots a night.
Well, she's now, like, kind of... It's hard to say that Carly Jackson is a backup, but she's on Toronto with Elaine Chuli, who is awesome. So, not that Carly Jackson isn't. I'm just not sure it's a 1A, 1B split there, just because Elaine Chuli was so good last year. Goaltending in general in the PHF last year was ridiculous. You either had it or you didn't.
Right. And so to have two is like
absolutely
ridiculous advantage.
Yeah, when we get to Toronto, we're just going to kind of like salivate over their goaltending situation for a while. But back to Buffalo, there's anytime you add Michaela Grant-Mentis to a team, it's going to lift up, right? Like, they had the next to worst power play in the league. That should get better. I think they only had like a 10% power play last year.
I mean, sometimes these things don't work out. You add a really good player to a team, and I'm always of the mind where don't expect too much from new players and new situations all the time.
Isn't that right, Jonathan Huberdeau? Again, I think there's going to be a lot of adjustment in Buffalo, and I think there's more talent there. But unfortunately for Buffalo, I think every team's got more talent. And we'll touch on this later, but I think just the talent level in the league in general has skyrocketed this season.
Right. But if if you're the witch and you stir the talent cauldron, like, not everything's going to be the same. It's not going to be, heterogeneous across the mixture. And so, like, some teams are going to gel faster than others.
Absolutely.
And that's the name of the game this year, it seems like, because this is when they changed all the rules for free agency and such.
Yeah. So I think overall, we're probably looking at a Buffalo team that is better, all told, but maybe doesn't raise its total standings all that much.
And out the gate, how have they done?
They're 1-1 out of the gate over this weekend, playing against Montreal, who is probably another team that looks to be near the bottom of the league. But, they scored 8. They scored 7 goals over the weekend. That's a good
2 games
outpour in 2 games. So if they can keep that up, maybe they can keep themselves up in the standings a little bit longer than I'm expecting. But since this is our podcast, I'm saying they'll probably be like 5th or 6th.
All right.
Next, the other big kahuna in the PHF this season, at least from my perspective, the Whale. We're doing this alphabetically if people haven't figured out yet. Like 2 B teams and then the C team. Yes. Alphabetically. Connecticut, and then we'll have the 3 M teams, and then it'll be all great.
But, the Connecticut Whale are always first in your heart no matter what, right?
100%. They will never not be first in my heart. Also, they're really fucking good. Like their forwards, the forwards that they can throw out are bonkers. Like I don't even know if they have to play defense.
Like throw out like onto the ice, not like throw out.
Like into a garbage can.
Well, I mean, because that also says something like, oh, your cuts. If you're cutting really good players, oh, maybe you're a really good team. But no, you're talking about
like
their on ice product.
Yes, legitimate. Like they. Let me rephrase.
I was making jokes.
I know. It's a lineup that I think any team outside of Boston would just slobber over. Just in their forwards, Kennedy Marchment, Alyssa Wolfeiler, Janine Weber, Amanda Conway, Taylor Gerard, Emma Vlasic, Melissa Samoskevich, like these are all established players who are very good at hockey. Like it's absurd. And then you look at their defense. Remember, last year they were the best defensive team as well as the best offensive team in the league. And they probably only got better because they brought in fucking Mallory Suliotis. They're good. They're very good. And they brought in Miri Risenen to be the 1B to Abby Ives. And when we talk about how like, oh yeah, Buffalo got better, and we'll talk about how, Minnesota got better and whatever. So did Boston and Connecticut. And Connecticut might have the most potent, like again, on paper, but might have the most potent group of forwards that this league has seen, at least in the 3 years that I've been paying attention.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that several teams have signed 2 really good goalies. I think that is a little bit begotten by the tournament format in which they play sometimes, or like, short weekend game format.
Yeah.
Because, you don't have time to recover a goalie in that time, so let's get 2 fresh ones.
Yeah, you're playing back-to-backs every weekend. And also, I think a lot of teams saw what happened to Minnesota when Amanda Levier went down last year.
Yeah.
And I think I was reading in the Ice Garden today that she had a .937 save percentage when she went down. And the rest of the goalies on the team collectively that year had below a 900% save percentage.
Yikes.
And so... have 2 good goalies. It turns out that's important. We saw it last year with Katie Burt and Lavisa Sealander in Boston, how well that played out. It's going to be imperative again this year. Probably people get injured, especially goalies. They get run into, they tweak a knee, and in a 24 game season which is long, but isn't that long.
Well, it's relatively compressed.
Yeah,
right?
they're done by March, I believe. And so in a 24 game season, I mean, you go down with a knee injury and you might be done. So it's kind of imperative to have that backup or that 1B to your 1A, and the Connecticut have it in spades in their goaltender tandem. They're absolutely ridiculously talented.
Yeah. The overarching story, I think, in all of these teams is like, well, a lot of new faces. How's the mix gelling? A lot of new faces. How's the mix gelling? The Rivs also are facing a ton of turnover.
More than you would imagine for a professional sports team.
Yeah, it kind of, it's weird. There seemed to be something going on with this team the last couple of years, and you don't exactly understand what, either personal or political. But
yeah, when you dump basically your entire team and your front office and your coaching staff, and you only retain 3 players from the previous season, that says, like, on the one hand, you could look at that and say, holy crap, they realized that they needed to shuffle it up and they went for it. Or you can look at it and say, there was something rotten, and hopefully what was rotten got kicked out and what was good has stayed. But they also...
Or the converse of that,
yeah,
too.
that's like, we know Anya Packer's gone and they're a frickin' peach. So, like, we're going to hope for the best, especially since her wife is still on the team.
Right.
And Madison Packer also seems to be just, like, totally righteous as a human being. And so, like, we'll see what happens here, but, like, no team has more gelling to do than the Rivs.
Yeah, they're bringing in a new coach, a new system entirely. And everyone is an off-season addition.
A new arena.
Yeah.
I have a pun for you.
Yeah.
I bet the Rivs really maul people at home this year.
Oh, yeah? Is it right outside the Hollister?
Yeah, because they're playing in a mall.
Yeah, it's some very famous mall in New Jersey that other crazy things happen at.
The American Dream Mall, I believe, is the name of it, and they can seat up to 2,000 people for this, so
yeah,
it's not small.
Like, why not?
But it's just like it has a very like Tanya Harding, practicing in the mall feel to it that I just can't shake until I'm sure I'll see a game there, maybe even this weekend, and be like, oh, it works really well. But until I see that, it's the same as Mullet Arena, right? Like by all, yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit different for an upstart hockey league that,
right,
could use some exposure. Like, I think that's actually kind of a fun play in a weird way. I hope the players don't mind it. I don't know what the conditions are like playing in said mall.
If it's near the food court and you're smelling Panda Express during the whole game, like I would not be able to. I'd be like, I know I'm eating that.
You're like going down to take a face off. You're like, is that Cinnabon? And then you lose the face off. I mean, that's home ice advantage.
Yeah. Or home cooking.
Yeah. If you're bad, do players go to Lids and buy your hat and then throw it on the ice for a hat trick or something? Like,
I mean, you have easy access. Like you might be a little bit back depending on how fast the cashier is. But
if someone scores a hat trick, just the crowd empties Lids.
They're like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to our franchise.
Yeah, we were never going to sell all these. This insurance payment is going to be amazing.
So, detour alert. This episode has orange signs all over it. The 3 players we mentioned coming back are Madison Packer, Kendall Cornine, and Kelly Babstock. Madison Packer and Kendall Cornine were, along with Rebecca Russo, were pretty much the only people who could score for the Rivs last year. And they also were really bad at defense. So it makes sense in a way to keep 2 of the 3 people who could score goals for you and then just shunt everything else off into the ether. They revamped their goaltending tandem. They brought in Evelina Makinen to replace Brooke Walejko as kind of the 1A or the starting goaltender. Evelina has like a dozen years of professional hockey experience. So like this is like banking on somebody who has a track record. They also brought in Rachel McQuiggy. I hope I'm saying that. It could be McQuig, but I'm going to go with McQuiggy as well, who had been very good for Princeton for the last couple of years. Okay. So like there's youth, there's experience in goaltending or in goal. You really just have to wonder, like, how the hell do they put it all together? You normally, when you bring in a new coach, you're like, oh, well, the players will have to like get used to their system. Well, nobody's used to the system. So like that could be good because they're all starting from scratch, or it could be bad because nobody has a hell of an idea what's going on. Like you don't really know how this is going to play out. They did lose 2-0 to Boston in their only game during week 1 at Boston. I'm not going to read too much into that because
that could be either a good loss or a bad loss. Could go either way. Really.
I'm guessing as far as like on the good loss scale, that's probably not too bad, especially considering they bludgeoned the Whale in game 1. So, but it's a longish season, 24 games to go or 23 games to go for them. And I think they're going to be kind of more middle of the pack, somewhere in that like 3, 4, 5, probably closer to 5 range.
Okay.
But I do think the like counting stats will be better. Like they might not move up in the standings so much, but they will, on paper, they'll be a better team. And then that'll be something to kind of branch off of as they go into season 9. Just following with the M teams, Minnesota is next up. If you know the alphabet, if not, we're here to help you. We'll get you through this. So the story of Minnesota last year was with or sans Amanda Levier. With Amanda Levier, pretty good. Without Amanda Levier, super bad.
The loon pads told the story of the season.
Yeah, who knew, right?
Who?
Whom? They've got Amanda Levier back this year, and by all reports, they're healthy and ready to rock and roll. They did perform, okay this weekend. They did end up losing both of their games.
Predictably, Amanda Levier got shelled. Do we know if she has new pads for this season?
I have not seen pictures yet.
Is it like
I'm gonna guess
Amy Klobuchar's face?
It's a half breed between a loon and a fish. Or it's a loon eating a fish.
We're just doing genetic splicing on hockey pads now.
It's like they sent her pads to Chernobyl for a couple of months, and this is what came back. They also glow in the dark. Levier is going to be awesome. We know that. The real question in Minnesota in the past has been, okay, who outside of Ali Thunstrom is going to score a bunch of goals? This year, it's like, who's going to score any goals? Because Ali Thunstrom went to Boston,
right,
to win a championship.
Yep.
So like you're replacing your like spiritual on ice, off ice, and like statistic leader from the last several years with, well, one, a bunch of people named Sydney. There are like 3 Sydneys on this team, but there's a ton of talent coming in. Amanda Boulier came back after moonlighting in Boston for a year. You add Sydney Baldwin and Sydney Morin, who are not related, to their defense. And, these are all puck moving defenders who should kind of, in a way, like it's going to be a change from like Ali Thunstrom getting the puck and skating faster than everybody to having these puck moving defenders on the back end who can help with a breakout, who can, find forwards in the middle of the ice and hit them with a clean pass, or they're all good skaters in their own right, so they can generate that breakout,
right,
and help and carry the puck. So
but it's a very different way to score. It's a very different way to play. And like, yeah, Minnesota's having a tough time, it seems, figuring out who's scoring, if not Ali Thunstrom. So let's, I don't know, hold out hope that they can kind of right the ship and figure out how to put the puck in the net and how to kind of play with this new style that's kind of needed.
Yeah, they also not related, brought in Sidney Brote, who is expected to carry a large chunk of that scoring load.
Okay.
It could be brought also. Apologies if I...
It's that DT.
I know you are a Minnesota stan. I think Minnesota is probably the third best team in the league. Maybe fourth, depending on how you feel about Toronto. I could see them taking third or fourth, but I could also see this team gelling quickly and Amanda Levier just being like, no, I will not be defeated. And, you know, at the end of the season, they're first or second.
Yeah, it seems like a stretch.
It seems like a stretch, but Levier is amazing. And in Loon Pads, we trust.
I Levier, me some Levier. But this team seems a little overmatched and is also, you know, trying to figure itself out again after losing a star player. So that is never a fun position to be in. Yeah, hopefully they can right the ship. That'd be
like Downward Dog.
that would be nice for them. New team alert. Montreal has the Force. May the Force be with you.
Who is this? Are they real? Will they be a force? A force majeure?
Oh,
in local parlance?
Yeah.
I think the first question is pretty easy to answer because we have a roster. We know who they are. That's pretty. They are real. They played games this weekend, going 1-1 against the Buttes, so we know they're real. Will they be a force? However, that could take all season to figure out.
Yeah.
And no team in the league is younger than Montreal. No team in the league is as brand new as Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
They did bring in some established talent. They added Anne-Sophie Bettis?
Bete?
I'm so bad with the Quebecois names. I can say Quebecois fucking easy, but like their names. Anyways, the double first name thing in Quebec is huge, so I can think of no better name for the first captain of the new Quebecois PHF franchise than somebody who has a beautiful Quebecois name. Outside of them, though, like Brooke Stacy is kind of an established talent and will be called upon to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But this roster is really young.
And young doesn't necessarily mean bad, but we've gotten to a point where Boston is kind of soaking up the like premier draft picks and best kind of free agents coming out of college year after year. And everyone else is kind of dealing with the rest, it seems like.
Boston has an advantage that Minnesota also has of just being in a hockey hotbed. You've remarked about this several times. You know, like in Minnesota, you can go outside and take a couple of quick whiffs and know where hockey is being played within like 6 blocks, right? And so there's always
roller hockey over there in a cul-de-sac. I smell it.
Minnesota has this kind of built-in advantage that they can use. So does Boston. You'd think Montreal will have that as well as and Toronto as things progress. But for this first season, and especially since they decided to play games all over the Quebec province instead of just in Montreal, and so they don't have this like home ice arena like advantage built in, there are going to be fans. Like it's Quebec. Like there are going to be fans there are going to be butts in seats every night.
I am curious how this like barnstorming approach works. Like if it works for marketing or if it's like a net loss. I don't know. Just curious. And maybe they're just feeling out arenas where they want to base themselves to, because I'm sure they have their choice.
It feels like a season-long preseason.
Kind of, yeah. And that's what WHL teams do, right?
Yeah. And I think... and like Seattle did it their first year. They played all over, like in all the WHL rinks in Washington State. I can see some real benefit to this. you're getting the game out. There hasn't been a women's hockey team in Quebec since the Canadians Women Hockey League folded.
Well, it's not a men's hockey team there either.
They're
They're the only professional hockey team in town. I mean, I'm sure there's some like lower level team, but whatever.
Right. So like there is an opportunity there for a lot of building of a persona and of a reputation and, getting your product out there. And, it helps if you win a lot of those games.
Yep.
But just the recognition being out there is a good thing. Hopefully it's just a 1-year plan and next year they have an arena and they're like, we're here now, but come see us.
Yeah, for the players at least.
Oh, that's especially for women's players. Like, they're not making $3 million a year to be a fourth liner. So all that travel with people who, some of which will still have, other jobs or full-time gigs that they're trying to do while playing professional hockey, that seems rough. And so I think there's probably going to be some wear and tear on this team by the end of the season. And honestly, I think Montreal is probably 6th or 7th in the league this year.
Toronto, on the other hand, we're expecting some big things from mostly. I think the Toronto 6 joke still stands. They got to score 6 goals to win.
I mean, Elaine Chuli was so fucking good last year.
Right. They've made inroads into making that less of a prophecy.
They still have not. Yeah, we said that in the preview last year, and then it was like, oh, actually, their goalie's really fucking
really
good. Toronto also still hasn't lost a game on Canadian soil, so that might turn into hasn't lost a game in the Ontario province if they drop some to Montreal this year.
It just gets more and more specific.
But apparently, they haven't lost in this neighborhood in Toronto. They haven't lost on this block in this neighborhood in Toronto. But,
in a week.
Yeah, in a week since last Thursday. And Toronto's going to be real good. I think they are definitely they're definitely in that top half of the league. They put up a decent amount of goals this first weekend, despite losing Michaela Grant-Mentis.
Yeah, Soraya Tinker had a hell of a snipe from the blue line that I saw. They have a complete team. This team is very good, and then they went and added Michaela Grant-Mentis. So, it's a team where it doesn't have a ton of turnover. We've just added the superstar. So that's part of the reason we're expecting a bit of a run from them.
Yeah. They also picked up Teresa Vanasova, who is awesome. And so
one of my favorites.
The people they picked up they were like, oh, we lost Michaela Grant-Mentis. That sucks. Let's just get a bunch of people who can score. And so their forward lines are going to be awesome. Emma Woods, Taylor Woods, Michaela Cava, Cheyenne Darkangelo, Teresa Vanasova, Brittany Howard. I think Brittany Howard's going to win the scoring title. We'll get to that later.
Well, she holds it right now.
Yeah, right. Hey, look at me just making big stands.
Hot takes over here.
They also have Taylor Davidson, Lindsay Eastwood, Emma Greco on the back, and Soraya Tinker, and they brought in Tough Mustard herself, Carly Jackson. So this is a very good team, right? I don't think their losses are losses that are I think they can work around their losses better than some other teams. They brought in Geraldine Haney, who is a legendary hockey coach. And then they also have Angela James, who is possibly the best women's player of all time as their GM. There's some experience in that building.
Hockey Hall of Famer Angela James.
Right. I don't see a whole lot of weaknesses on this team. They are going to have to find a way to not rely so heavily on Elaine Chuli and Carly Jackson.
Yes.
they need their defense to be a little bit more stout than it was last season. And just, block a couple more shots a game here and there. Just keep some shots away from the net. Maybe force people wide a little bit better instead of allowing, this kind of like cavalcade of in close chances. But I do think that if we're splitting this league in half, which, there's 7 teams, so you can't actually do. But like
you can just split one in half. It's okay.
If there's an upper half and a bottom half, Toronto is definitely in that upper half. And if I were like picking a team if I was picking a semifinalist, Toronto would absolutely be in that list of teams that I think would be in at least the semifinals.
Agreed.
So that is that's it. We're done. No. We wanted to kind of dive deeper into the league in general, just because there are some very interesting things. We talked about the new cap structure earlier. We talked about a lot of player movement, but a couple of the things that really stood out. One is this is the deepest player pool that I think the PHF has ever had.
Oh, definitely. Even
when adding a 7th team, which usually dilutes a talent pool, having salaries that you can market to and say, like, we're going to pay you a modest wage. A good chunk of these people are actually making a living wage.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to work at FedEx. And that's not a joke. That's what Michaela Grant-Mentis did as her full-time job. So with the money and the recognition and the visibility of the league, like with all of that added kind of fanfare and this acknowledgement that people need to be paid better, you actually see these big names coming back to or coming to the PHF for the first time. We hit on a couple of these, like Lauren Gable and Elizabeth Jaguar going to Boston. Those are 2 highly decorated women's hockey players.
Or Anne-Sophie Bette.
Yeah, like these all add dynamically talented players to an already deep talent pool. And you can see that when we can reasonably say that every team in the league got better this offseason, and yet it still might not be enough.
Because they're not necessarily competing with themselves. They are competing with the PWHPA. And, hopefully the competition between the 2 leagues continues to make each one better. I think we're in that kind of paradigm right now, but you never know how long that lasts. And so hopefully it can last until both of these leagues can really support a fun on ice product that a lot of people can glom onto and have a fun time with.
Absolutely. And it seems like we're in a good place now that some people have kind of shifted around and maybe left certain positions within each league. We've got a new commissioner in the PHF, Reagan Carey, who is very much just pro women's hockey and wants to grow the sport. Has said publicly many times that 2 competing leagues is good for women's hockey. It grows the game. It requires these leagues to up their game. And, if this ultimately leads to 1 league, cool. If this ultimately leads to 2 competitive leagues, cool. It would be a bummer if one killed off the other. But at the same time, I think we're kind of on the precipice of big movement in women's hockey. We've already seen a ton of big movement, but Reagan Carey said to Haley Salvian in The Athletic, we're all on the same page, knowing that the salary cap increase is a huge step forward, but it's nothing we're resting on. And so that is somebody who is prepared to go even further to raise the women's game, to raise the profile of it, to raise the amount of money and stability that women playing it can have. Mm-hmm. And that's that's a massive growth model in and of itself, having people in place that are full-time. That's another big thing. The PHF, most of the administrative offices positions are full-time now. They didn't have that in the past.
Yeah, that's new.
Like this is a big step forward. That salary cap is a huge part of it. And with that, they've also been able to target players who are playing in Europe to come over to the US. And considering like the maximum contract length is only 2 years, like that's a huge gamble for these women to come from Europe to settle in like Danbury or New Jersey for a year. But like the financial stipulations of it makes it worth it for them to at least try it out. And that's a huge, huge boon to the league and to the sport. And moving forward, hopefully the PHF so often does this, like kicks itself right in the face trying to do things. Hopefully we can see less of that moving forward. They need to stop taking over after the NHL in that right and kind of chart their own path where they're not fucking things up all the time. And sadly, we're going to talk about that in a little bit here.
Yeah, that's a bit of a lead in.
Yeah.
But for the time being, what
if the gun is introduced in Act 1?
Yeah. Also crucial to the PHF success is they have signed on with ESPN Plus for 2 more years. They've had a veritable success the past year and change when displaying these games. It's hopefully been evident in the numbers for ESPN Plus. And I think, it's a net win for the league to be a part of the largest sports brand out there, at least just displaying their games. ESPN Plus will stream all league games, special events, and Isobel Cup playoffs in the US. And outside of the US, TSN will provide streaming and broadcasting in Canada.
Those are huge platforms. Those are the 2 platforms, right?
Right. It's where you watch hockey if you're watching hockey otherwise. So, let's put women's hockey there.
Right.
Absolutely great. And their product last year was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about ESPN, at least, is like you can stumble across it, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you bought the Hulu ESPN Disney bundle because like it was cheaper than buying all 3 and you were going to get Hulu and Disney anyways. Oh shit, there's women's hockey on Hulu now. Like,
right.
That's
like,
you can stumble across women's hockey, which is like on Twitch, like chances are the casual observer wasn't going to stumble across it.
Whereas on ESPN, you can make like what we used to do watching ESPN in the middle of the day on cable. Like, oh, it's Scandinavian strongman competition. Well, fine. I can fall asleep to this.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. You can just, hopefully you'll bring new fans into the fold just by their ability to tune in. Maybe your NHL team's done or you've gotten blacked out from a game because the NHL blackout rules suck.
Yeah.
Perfect place for the PHF to step in.
Yeah, and I think just it really allows a new generation of fans to attach themselves to something, right? It's like it's not in the past where you had to like really go out of your way to find the product. You can very easily find the product now, and so you can like you and I kind of attached ourselves to players and teams early on, but like we have a hockey podcast and we're obviously like nerdy about this shit. Like the casual fan now can be like, oh, what's going on? Oh, what is this? Oh, the Connecticut Whale. That's a cool looking uniform. Oh, this Kennedy Marshman lady is like destroying fools. Like awesome. Like, holy shit, this is really cool to watch. And like, that's how I fell in love with soccer, was just like stumbling across it and watching it. And then, you pick up fandom and you attach yourself to players, you buy jerseys, you buy hats, you buy like all the shit. And that's how you grow the game, is this exposure that ESPN Plus brings to women's hockey. And you're right. The broadcasts were actually really well done. I thought a couple more camera angles would be nice, but
sure,
other than that, it's great.
So, predictions. Most important part about these is we look terrible at the end of the season.
Regardless of what we say. Yeah. We look not so handsome. All right. Regular season champs. Who you got?
I see you're going with the odds, so I'm going with what I want to happen. See the Toronto Six win the best regular season record.
I am gonna go with the Boston Pride because I believe in not putting myself out there too much.
Leading goal scorer.
I feel like you probably didn't put yourself out there too much.
No.
And neither did I.
Going with the Boston Pride, Elizabeth Shiger. I think she's going to steamroll coming out of college and just be one of these several new faces, new forces stories we've had a couple years running now, huh?
I'm going to go with Brittany Howard. Yeah, it's really easy to make these predictions when Brittany Howard destroyed fools in the first weekend.
And she is currently leading the league in goals.
I was totally going to choose Brittany Howard before writing this preview after the first weekend. That's a lie. Most points, I'm going to step right into the chalk here and say Kennedy Marchment repeats as the most points in the league.
I've got a bit of a dark horse here. I'm going with Christina Patina. I think she is, I just see her on ice product. And I'm like, how long before this becomes just a dominant and unstoppable force?
Christina's always been awesome and just kind of in some ways overshadowed by the talent that she's playing with.
Right. That's one of the reasons that I feel like she's not really got her due. And so I think, most points might help cement her legacy.
All right.
MVP.
Can you tell I'm a Connecticut Whale fan? Kennedy Marchment. Back to back.
Yeah. The thing is, though, that's very, very possible and almost probable.
I want to be right once, damn it.
Yeah.
You heard our predictions for last year's NHL season. I want to be right once.
And I'm going with Loonpads Levier. I think if Minnesota is going to be on the map this year, it's going to be on the back of a hell of an effort from her. So look forward to watching her this year, and hopefully that comes to pass. Isobel Cup finals, going really out on a limb here.
Yeah, both of us are just knocking on the door of that chalk factory saying, hey, can we get your most obvious chalk? I'm going to go the Connecticut Whale over the Minnesota Whitecaps with a 4-2 final.
All right. And I'm going Boston over anybody 2-0 because I think that's been the score that they've won with recently, right?
I think they won 4-2 against the Whale last year. And thus concludes our third annual PHF preview. But we're not done yet because hockey did stupid things.
Yeah, we unfortunately have to stay in Boston.
Just fuck this shit.
In the worst way, it is Miller time again. And that meaning Mitchell Miller, the much maligned former prospect, was drafted by the Arizona Coyotes several years ago and was subsequently given up into the void, if you will, because it came out that he had abused a developmentally disabled classmate who was black with just awful bullying, taunting, racist language, ableist, and awful stunts, one would say.
Yeah, there's physical, mental, emotional, just the whole, every sort of abuse except for maybe sexual abuse.
His name is Isaiah Meyer Carruthers, and his account of what he suffered at the hands of Mitchell Miller is now public and displayed on the Hockey Diversity Alliance Twitter account. His mother has been pretty outspoken as well over the years that Mitchell Miller did not really ever seemingly fess up, apologize, try to make right, try to make good after years of torture at his hands in school. And the accounts are harrowing. I encourage everybody listening to go read them. It really is above and beyond just simple childhood bullying. It really shows a disdain for your fellow person that few people seem to be capable of. And Boston fucked up. They thought either, I kind of think they were sold maybe a unfair story, a bill of goods, and they didn't really do their homework, and they fucked up and tried to sign this guy thinking that it would go away.
Yeah. If this had happened like 8 years ago.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, granted, it was happening 8 years ago. But like if the story had come out 8 years ago and Mitchell Miller had since done a lot of work to both internally and externally eradicate on some level the corrosive and awful behaviors that he had exhibited for almost the entirety of his childhood.
Yeah, like, do something. Give an interview. Like, he's not really done much to rehabilitate either the situation or his image.
Yeah,
and
that wasn't court ordered. And even that was a laughable attempt.
This was so bad it went to court. And that a NHL team would go out of their way to sign this guy, even to an ELC. He's not even like a terribly good prospect. He wasn't then. He's not terribly amazing now.
Maybe he was a 4th round draft pick. He was the USHL MVP last
because
year.
He's playing in a league that is below his talent level. Like, he should be lighting up the USHL.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's an offensive defenseman, which is, one of the most coveted positions in sport in NHL right now.
Gets GM salivating across the whole league.
Well, apparently so does his racism, because Don Sweeney, the GM, and Cam Neely, the president of hockey ops in Boston, like put this announcement out that like, oh, we've done all of our homework. We've talked to all the people. We believe that Mitchell is ready to reintegrate into hockey society, blah, 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 talking out my butthole, like all that stuff. And then while announcing the signing, like that they had weeks to prepare for, he said, I talked to my players and they're against it. They don't understand it. We're not even sure it's a good idea. Oh, right. And also, yeah, we didn't talk to the victim or the NHL at all.
Yeah, it was one of those rare occasions where one of these interviews is like actually like just jaw-dropping.
It's right up there with like the Ken Holland, I'm not going to go in all year or every year interview, except worse because there's like this awful racist ableist creature that is like being further enabled by these actions.
Yeah, it's clear that they just sort of didn't think that much about it and thought that they could get away with it.
It's like old hockey man 101. Like, oh, just pretend we did the work and maybe it'll work out. Like, no.
Right. If you had reached out to either the victim or his mother, they would have given you a very stark account of years of abuse.
Not just an isolated mistake as a 14-year-old, which is what Mitchell Miller portrays this as.
And I think most importantly in these discussions, it's Mitchell Miller's agent that I think is kind of getting left out of this. Like, my guess is that this agent said all the right things, and that the team then just took that at face value, and they should not have. They should have done their own fucking homework. But okay, you know, if you have an agent of a really good looking prospect coming to you and saying, there's this incident, it was one time, it was years ago, he said sorry, blah, 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 you are technically telling the truth, but you are lying. And the reality is that Mitchell Miller did say, quote unquote, sorry. He sent a kind of shoddily written Instagram DM about a week before this news broke. And
while saying that this is not related to hockey.
Yeah.
Except I'm about to sign with one of the like premier franchises in hockey history.
Exactly. So obviously there's not really a shred of real remorse in this kid.
Or his family.
And that's also kind of the surprising thing is like, okay, if you had handled this sensibly from the get-go as just people, as just regular fucking people, he would not be now persona non grata and probably gonna, I don't know, play in the fucking KHL or something like next year. He probably could have had chances. Yeah. But he has decided not to earn the chances, because you have to earn chances.
Usually.
Yeah, usually. I mean, in a just and fair world, yeah, you don't usually get more than a couple of chances, and especially with sustained behavior, not single mistakes.
Yeah, he has repeatedly gone to the well of labeling this as a singular event, despite the fact that it went from first grade until he was suspended as, I believe, a 15 or 16-year-old from school.
Yeah.
It was two guys who rubbed a push pop on the inside of a urinal and baited this developmentally challenged child into putting it in his mouth. The kid had to go get STD tested. Like, he has mental scarring to this day. And when the school did an inquiry about it, the other individual was like, yes, we did this. It was absolutely horrible. I'm terribly sorry. I want to say I'm sorry to Isaiah. I want to like be a better person. Like, actually went through the steps, and Mitchell Miller denied it.
Yeah.
And then they had camera footage from the security cameras and like 15 other students, including the other student who was accused, saying, yes, we did this. And Mitchell was proud of it and told a bunch of people about it. And so because of that, they suspended him for longer than they did the other student. Like, at no point in this kid's life has he ever faced real, actual consequences.
Yeah.
Until this came to light in 2020 when he got drafted.
And obviously, he didn't think he faced consequences then, or I don't know. He probably thought he faced enough consequences then.
Yeah, and he's like, well, my dream has been put on hold. It's like, you physically and mentally and racially abused a child to the point where he has severe trauma for the better part of a decade. You don't get the benefit of the doubt here.
Right. You don't get to have that fucking dream, buddy.
Yeah.
That's a privilege. And you can go try and convince some accounting firm that your narcissism is their benefit. Like, It's absolutely insane the amount of entitlement that he and his family have displayed in this situation.
Yeah, his
from
parents,
front to back.
Yeah, his parents are both fucking assholes too. Every time they speak, it's like, oh, that's why he is the way he is. Probably the most galling thing about all of this, outside of like the obviously horrific outcome, is that Mitchell Miller is going to be fine. He's a rich white kid. What is fine? Like, he will have a roof over his head. He will have his mental health. He will be financially stable. What I'm saying is he's had like 6 years since this first came to light, and like he was convicted in a juvenile court of this.
Mm-hmm.
He's had 6 years to start showing real contrition, to like be a practitioner of restorative justice and to like actually move forward. And he hasn't in one way at all.
Right. And like,
he's the same shithead.
I'm only glad that it has focused people's perception on the victim this time, because before it was just this victim in this story of this prospective draft pick. And now, you know, thanks to the work of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, Akeem Aliu, who got a firsthand account and published it, you know, this is more real, and hopefully more lessons will be learned by the hockey community from it this time. I mean, I say that knowing that, well, last time not enough was learned, but maybe this time, maybe, hopefully, I don't know.
What I was kind of getting at earlier is like, we're never going to see what we hope from Mitchell Miller. I don't think he has it in him. And so, but he's going to be fine because he will be given chances in other arenas to make considerable amounts of money and be successful. It won't be in the NHL so long as, you know, Gary Bettman's statement actually has any teeth to it.
So that's the other fucking thing.
Gary Bettman like spat fire over this.
And I mean, as he should.
Yeah, as he should. But like it's so unexpected from him.
His angry dad jeans.
Yeah, it's so unexpected because he's part of the problem.
Well, and I mean, part of the problem is not enough people have spoken out against it so vociferously. That it was the commissioner of the hockey league, like, and that he implied that this player might not be eligible to play was also very, I don't know, kind of not smart on his behalf, because now the union has to get involved. And he simply probably could have said there may be an investigation. But it's very interesting. Like, okay, now because Gary opened up his mouth for once to like say something honest and human, now he's going to kind of get punished for it in a weird way. Is Mitchell even part of the NHLPA though? Like, yeah, he signed the contract, so
that's true. And
so the union has to then come and defend the contract.
Hopefully, they're just like, you know what? Nah.
That would be so funny.
Well, like, and the league doubled down and said, oh, you know what? Logan Maillo's not eligible either. Which, like,
good.
Yeah, right?
Like, that.
Holy shit.
When I read that, I had to reread it 2 or 3 times. It's like, oh my God. Oh, all right. Wow. Maybe there is, you know, some semblance of justice thanks to the sheer amount of public opinion that these two shitheads have garnered. Like, yeah. You know, maybe we are starting to get a little bit of movement. It's in fits and starts, but shit, if the league is going to bat against this type of behavior, entering it in this way, and with Logan Maillo, like, all right, that's a better legacy for Gary.
Yeah, considering right now his is like, I grew the game, but turned a blind eye to all the bad stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're in we're in uncharted territory with Uncle Gary here, and hopefully it's like a precursor of good things to come. Not going to hold my breath.
But that's why like, this is such a crazy thing. Like, this is totally just unprecedented on so many different strange little levels, because one team got in its head, hey, maybe we could sign this kid and no one will actually care this time. And then the public opinion just went haywire.
It's kind of a bummer, but it's also great.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm changing gears here. So it turns out that Boston can't just void his contract. And
yeah,
so
I don't think so.
On the downside, Mitchell Miller is going to get a decent chunk of money
Probably
off of this. On the upside, fuck you, Boston.
Yeah, that is very, very funny. I mean, they'll be able to settle out his contract for not a whole lot, I'm sure. But also props to the Bruins players, who also kind of said they didn't like this publicly in the ways that they could.
Yeah, Nick Foligno, who has just like apparently popped back into the hockey consciousness by being kind of resurgent this year, was like, no, this sucks.
Yeah, Patrice Bergeron had to give an interview about it, and in so many words, he was like, the captain of the team said, well,
he has
shit.
a lot of fucking work to do if he ever wants to play here.
Yeah.
The long and short of it basically is this sucks, and hopefully the posturing from the NHL is not just that. It's an actual show of conscience or conscience. And we get to see a real like stance against this sort of shitty behavior from a league that historically has not stood for anything.
Right.
And you know, kudos to the HDA for being, that's the Hockey Diversity Alliance, at, I think it's official HDA on Twitter. Kudos to them for actually reaching out to the victim and working with them. The Bruins have since renounced the contract, although that's kind of up in the air.
Don Sweeney called his mom.
Yeah,
they talked for 45 minutes,
and they talked about getting some sort of like counseling or therapy for Isaiah, which would be like that'd be a nice gesture.
Sure.
Like it, like hopefully one, we never hear Mitchell Miller's name again with regards to an NHL contract. Hopefully we don't have to like drag this out from time to time. But I hope that the lessons here and the, as of right now, forward movement that the NHL is making is something that is not forgotten, and that we have an actual charted path forward with regard to how we protect the people who are outside of hockey from those who are inside hockey.
Yeah.
Speaking of protecting those who are inside hockey, we hate this guy, but we are very thankful that he's alive.
Evander Kane, unfortunately, was part of an accident, and this is in contrast to my casual jokes about this on maybe the tweeter, but surviving hockey is the most important part of the game, and safety is key, and that he got his arm slashed accidentally by falling, and then just escape blade being in the wrong place at the wrong time was really bad. He did everything right. He got up and skated to the bench and may have saved his life.
Yeah.
But yeah, the harrowing incident that shows, hey, we're all human.
And also like hockey's really fucking dangerous.
It is.
When you get down to it.
Yeah, I think it was Pat Maroon's skate. Like,
Yeah.
you watch the incident, it is just an awful accident. There's obviously no malicious behavior.
Oh yeah,
He just,
100%.
fell, and people in this sport have knives on their feet.
Yeah, very sharp knives, like repeatedly sharpened knives.
Yeah, right.
And so we do genuinely hope that Evander Kane is able to recover. We're glad he did not die. We are glad that he's going to be out 3 to 4 months supposedly with this injury and the post-surgery recovery. We are glad that he's going to survive. And
you know who else is glad? His many, many creditors.
Yeah, they get in that they're skimming off the top of that big payday he got with Edmonton. But it's a sobering reminder of the actual danger that anyone really playing hockey puts themselves in every time they lace up knives to their feet. So
yeah, Jaroslav Slavkovsky also suspended 2 games for a pretty awful boarding call versus the Red Wings. Young kids got to learn a lesson.
Yeah, 2 games for knocking a player out for 10 to 12 weeks and having to reconstruct his face seems a little light, but it's the first.
The injury was that bad.
Yeah, he's going to be out.
I'd heard that.
He's out 3 months.
Fucking yikes.
So he got called up from the Griffins, took a slap shot to the chin, split open his chin, knocked out a couple of teeth. He had 16 stitches, was wearing a full cage wore it for like 3 or 4 games, played the next fucking day, by the way, and had just taken off the full cage for this game against Montreal when he got planted into the boards by the number 1 overall pick and is now having like actual facial surgery.
Yeah,
so,
who's like 6'6" and not skinny.
He is a big man.
He's huge.
That was one of the things coming out is like he is physically ready for this league, and he's a big boy. So it should be more, but this is George Paros's world, and we're all just living in it, laughing at how inconsistent it is, and so
yeah, he got a good spin of the wheel of discipline from the Department of Player Unsafety.
That apparently only has 2 games on it this season.
Yeah. Well, at least it wasn't embarrassingly low max fine.
Yeah.
That is an option. That is an option that they are opting.
That's what Kirill Kaprizov got. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally star treatment.
Yes.
Totally star treatment. And also he was hitting Drew Doughty.
And people were like, nah. Okay.
Yeah, I also want to hit Drew Doughty. Yeah. So George Paros is like, yeah, fuck Drew Doughty.
All right, folks, that is going to be it for us today. If you get a chance, or even if you don't get a chance, and you just want to be really cool, watch the PHF. Games are Saturdays and Sundays, streaming on ESPN Plus or Hulu if you are one of those folks. It's super fun. We say this every year. It's a ton of fun. It's a growing sport. Get into it. Find a favorite player. Become a fan of the Connecticut Whale. I mean, of any team, but mostly the Whale, because they're the coolest. And, we hope to, get some feedback from our listeners to say, even if it's just to say, I watched for the first time ever and it was pretty cool. That's awesome. Like that's butts in seats or eyes on TVs. That's what we're looking at here for the PHF. So spend some time. It's going to be rainy and shitty for like the next, 6-7 months here in Portland.
We are in binge watching season,
and like snowy and crappy in other parts of the country. And like, what good is going outside anyways? So watch some women's hockey on ESPN Plus.
Unless you're going to see them live.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. If you are looking for us on the internet, you're not streaming TV, you're streaming this podcast. You can find us elsewhere at handsomehockey.com is our website. Handsome Hockey Podcast on Instagram, at Handsome Hockey when we're not banned. We're there on Twitter.
Knew that was coming.
Turns out if you call a racist, they don't like that anymore in Elon's world. If you are one of those people who sends emails to folks, if you are a 96-year-old sending an email to tell my office just how terrible we are, handsomehockeypod@gmail.com. And then finally, the Handsome Hockey Facebook page is a thriving community that gets posted to once every like 4 or 5 months. So if you're listening to us, which, I mean, if you're listening to me talk right now, you are, follow us on whatever platform you're listening to us, set us up for auto downloads. Go review us places to wash out all of the 1-star reviews we got from Barstool chuckleheads who probably were abused by their parents. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you, but go watch the PHF.
Restez beau tout le monde.
Oh, I didn't say the thing yet. Stay handsome, everybody. It's Backwards Day!